board meeting. Today is Tuesday, June the 29th. We have a regularly scheduled board meeting and a need for an executive session. Executive session pursuant to ARS 38431.03 A and 1 to discuss the potential appointment of Natalie Tenney as Director of Nutrition Services. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Humphries. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, then we will vote. All those in favor of moving to executive session, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. We will recess to executive session. Okay, once again, we are reconvening. This is June 29th, Tuesday, regular board meeting. We will go to item 2, opening items, and 2.01, calling the meeting to order. We'll go to a moment of silence. 2.02, 2.03, we'll go to a Pledge of Allegiance led by Mrs. Wood. If you just join me in a moment of silence.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mrs. Wood. Welcome those of you in the audience and those who are watching the meeting on live stream. We're at item 2.04. Ms. Wilson, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Reed Carr,
Here.
Ms. Sheila Ugeti,
Here.
Ms. Laurie Wood,
Here.
Ms. Jill Humphreys,
Here.
Dr. Charles Santa Cruz.
Here.
Mr. President, all board members are present. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Mrs. Wilson. Item 2.05 is a call for a public hearing pursuant to ARS 15905, and we will convene a public hearing under item 3 once we hear a motion for the hearing.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Humphreys. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, we will vote on calling for a public hearing. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. We're at item 3, which is the public hearing, 3.01, for FY 2022 proposed budget presentation. And Dr. McCord, I'll defer to you.
Thank you, Dr. Santa Cruz. Governing board members, tonight we present the fiscal year 2022 proposed budget. Now I'll turn it over to Ms. Betts.
Good evening, Dr. Santa Cruz, Dr. McCord, governing board members. The content of this presentation is very comparable to what was presented to you as the proposed budget. However, the tax rate information has been updated to reflect what we do believe will be very, very close to our tax rates that will be approved in early August by the county. So to begin, we'll just make some introductory remarks, show the proposed M&O budget, the proposed unrestricted capital budget, give you some details of other fund budgets, indicate the proposed budget risks and opportunities. The greatest, of course, is that we do not yet have a state budget. So if that indeed happens, that it's not approved, and there are some substantive changes, we, of course, will bring back the budget to you as early as September to make the necessary revisions. And then finally, our estimated tax rates. So this is the alignment to the strategic operating plan. Always as we anticipate spend, we look at that spend in comparison to both the strategic plan as well as the commitments we made for the 2019 override. So generally speaking, the budget does support all 5 priorities of the strategic plan, as well as the override commitments made in November of 2019. So the 15% M&O override commitments, this grid quantifies the dollars being spent for each of those 3 main commitments. So you can see in 2021 and 2022, the class size reduction allocation will be the same at about $2 million. The social emotional support, you can see a slight increase in those due to benefit and salary increases. And then finally, maintaining salary competitiveness, going from $14.26 million to $18.66 million, for a total of $22.6 million that supports these M&O override commitments You recognize that the override is about 30 million, and about 10 million was reflective of the additional 5%, going from 10% to 15%. But you can see that we are well over that dollar amount associated with these override commitments made in November of 2019. So before I go any further, are there any specific questions about that? Okay, great, thank you.
Ms. Betts, sorry.
Oh, yes, uh-huh.
Dr. Santa Cruz, if I can ask Ms. Betts.
Go right ahead, Ms. Betts.
So the total override, total 15% override is 30 million or so.
Just over 30 million. Mhm.
And so where does the other 8 million go?
The other
Because you
8
only showed
million
22.
is associated with the commitments that were made in 2015. So some of those are also related to at least maintaining class sizes. Some of that was also related to maintaining salary competitiveness, as well as the other component was to support extracurricular activities throughout Gilbert Public Schools. So I will quantify that for the board in September when we present to you the bond and override report that's required annually.
Great, thank you.
Okay. So student counts, of course, our student counts are the basis for how we are funded. So you can see that in 2021, revised number 3 indicated our total student count, or ADM, of 30,822, down from 32,700 in the 21 adopted, which was projected a year ago for the 2021 school year. Since that time, the proposed budget, we are making an estimate that we would lose an additional 400 students. So you can see that the total from revised number 3 is 30,822, and we're projecting 30,422. These are the unweighted student counts. So if you take a look at the details, the 21 ADM loss from the 21 adopted, remember that was pretty much reflective of the actual student count from the 1920 school year. So we lost 1,930 student counts, or ADM, and then we are anticipating another 400 student loss for a total of over 2,300 student loss from the 21 adopted. I want to make it clear that this is ADM, it's not enrollment. We have reported enrollment losses to you all along. This is the actual student count reflective of the 100-day membership, or on Arizona Online, the number of hours actually recorded in their online work. Okay? So the M&O proposed budget capacity. Always struggling to where to point my clicker. There we go. So the base level amount is $4,359.55. We are presuming that the House budget will be approved and that they provided an inflation of 1.22%. So you can see the increase there. And then last year, Classroom Site Fund made a contribution that now will be actually moved into the state's general fund, so that the 2022 anticipated base level amount, that's what BLA stands for, is $4,445.53. In addition, the governor's budget, as well as the House budget, includes district additional assistance fully funded. And so at K-8, the amount is $450.76 per ADM, again, per student count, not enrollee. And then 912, they do have a little bit of an increase for textbooks, so a total of $562.62 per student.
I just would like to make a comment about that. That is the first time that district additional assistance is fully funded since 2009, correct?
I believe it was 2009 or 2010. I can't
Yeah,
remember
yes.
exactly, but right around that time.
Yes, thank you.
The other additional parameters of proposed budget capacity, the teacher experience index decreased slightly to just under 1.02. The average daily membership, again, as already shared, the 400 student projected loss, 200 at elementary and 200 at 912. Budget balance carry forward is estimated at $23.8 million. Again, to provide as much flexibility as possible. Finance staff is in the process now of maximizing that budget balance carry forward as much as possible, scrutinizing spend, determining if there are other funding sources that spend could be moved into so that we can continue to increase that budget balance carry forward. Classroom site fund is very notable. It was increased by $308 per weighted student count. This is reflective of also $192 per student of one-time monies. So Classroom Site Fund underestimated the revenues for the 2021 school year. So the $192 per student would be considered one-time, sort of catching up with their understatement in the current year. And then the Group B weight increases, these were new from the governor's budget, reflective of the House budget. So increases in our lowest weighted add-ons. So that's DD is, what is DD now? I lost it. Developmental delay, emotional disability, mild impairment. SLD is a specific learning disability, SLI speech language impairment, and OHI is other health impairment. And then the other large weights going from 5.833 to 5.988. Basically, just so that's clear, if I have a student that is mentally disabled or autistic or has a severe intellectual disability, that one student would be worth 5.988 times the base level amount for funding for the school district, reflective of the needs for them to be successful in Gilbert Public Schools. And then new is the .007 for gifted. We do not have a quantification of the amount in our budget because we don't have the data collected in our student count records indicating how many gifted students. We know how many enrollees we have. We don't know how many student counts of gifted students we have. So that will be a change that we will see in July to quantify those gifted students. So, oops, I went backwards, sorry. So the comparison of the budget parameters, again, I'd like to point out the revenue control limit transportation. We are keeping that the same as it has been in the past year. The base level amount you can see has grown from $4,300 and almost $60 up to $4,445. And then you can see the total weighted count in revised number 3 was 43,306, and now it's 43,139, just a little bit less than the current year. And the most notable, of course, is the Classroom Site Fund, where we anticipated $465 per weighted student count, and the JLBC actually indicated $733 per weighted student count. And again, of that 733, 192 of it is considered one-time money. Okay? Any questions before I go any further?
Dr. Santa Cruz, if I may.
Go ahead, Mr. Carr.
Ms. Betts, on the transportation revenue control limit, remind me, if I remember the formula correctly, it typically does not go down year to year, which actually can reward the district as we become more efficient in our transportation. We can still get the previous year's amount, but if we're more efficient, that frees up dollars to use elsewhere. Is that not correct?
That's correct.
And I'd highlight many of the efforts. We've spent a lot of one-time money over the last couple of years, the bonds approved by voters, et cetera, where we have replaced old buses. We have with more efficient buses. We have spent a large amount of time making our transportation routes more efficient to lower the cost. A lot of those things are enabling us to be more efficient with this number, therefore putting more dollars in the classroom. So I applaud your staff and my fellow board members for prioritizing that. Again, trying to create an efficiency so that we can put more dollars in the classroom.
I have, if I can,
Go ahead,
Dr. Santa Cruz.
Ms. Wood.
So I remember with the Classroom Site Fund, with the increase that the state gave us, there was also the idea that that would now cover expenses that we already had or that they already had paid. Is that right? Am I remembering that correctly?
So the maintenance of effort requirement still exists, so we cannot supplant with the new money. However, we are now able to expand the use of classroom site fund to what we considered support staff personnel. So these would be speech language pathologists, psychologists, social workers, behavioral health counselors. All of those would now be eligible for classroom site fund dollars.
Okay, that must have been what I was thinking. Thank you.
So this is the final comparison of the maintenance and operations budget capacity. I'm going to look at the 21 revised number 3 and compare it to the fiscal year 2022 proposed. Note that in the projected, we expected a budget decrease of over $11 million, but with the changes in the House budget as well as the increases in the budget balance carry forward directly related to the distance learning adjustment. If you remember, there was $3 million saved because the distance learning adjustment decreased. So from revised number 3, we had a current year budget of just under $264 million, and we are proposing for you to adopt $260.9 million. So the year-over-year budgetary loss in maintenance and operations is a total of $2.8 million, or a deficit of $2.8 million. So now, how do we go about balancing the budget? Well, as we've discussed, we have spend increases, so this summarizes all of the budgetary increases that the board has already approved. The total increased need is $7.7 million. And then our budgetary savings, if you recall, with the Employee Benefit Trust, we included a request to offer a premium holiday. This will not only assist our employees directly, but also saves about $1.5 million to the maintenance and operations budget. In addition, we've identified a decrease in district office personnel that has been realized of about $500,000, and then decrease of personnel due to fewer students out in our schools, about $4.5 million. So a total budgetary savings amount of $6.5 million. So to put the grid all together.
Ms. Betts, I'm sorry to ask. I keep.
That's okay.
Okay. I just wanted to highlight the decrease in district office personnel. I think when we said there's a $2.8 million deficit, that's directly related to our loss of students.
That's correct.
And as we lose students, we've had to decrease, the staff all around, but we also need to address that as well as in the district, admin, support staff. It's not just teachers, but when we have less students, those costs and those efficiencies have to carry over to every department. So I am appreciative of that. I would like to see more details about how we have addressed that as far as district office personnel and other staff throughout the district. I hate to see that. I don't want to see that. I want us to increase our students. I want us to be prepared and focus on getting students back and meet their needs. But at the same time, when they're not here, we can't expect to spend that money.
Agreed.
So maybe if you could, I don't know what would be the best way that you could show us another time. You do monthly budget reports. Maybe you could show us some more specifics about these cuts and how we're trying to be efficient in every level.
You bet.
Thank you.
Ms. Wood, Dr. Santa Cruz, if I may, Ms. Wood, and I think you make a very valuable point, and I think perhaps an update using the same format that's in the comprehensive annual financial report, which does have district level staff in there. And as if we look at that, we see that the district staff has decreased over the last several years and significantly, again, showing an efficiency as we try to put more dollars in the classroom.
So in balancing the budget, so we start with a total budget capacity decrease of $2.8 million. We are adding back the cost of the increases, the non-discretionary increases associated with Arizona State retirement, medical insurance, minimum wage, special education, then the pay increase, 2% across the board pay increase awarded to all employees. And then the premium holiday gives us money back, the decrease in district office personnel, as well as the decrease in personnel due to less students. We still have a budget deficit of just under $4 million. So the question becomes, how do we balance that budget? And we have balanced it in the existing proposed budget for you to adopt this evening. So as you know, we have gone through the effort of making a change, moving Neely Elementary to Houston. So there is a $1 million ongoing savings associated with the closure of one school or the repurposing of a school. Moving teachers, more additional teachers eligible to move from maintenance and operations into Fund 596, which is our JTED fund. And then increasing the classroom site fund contribution, the ongoing, due to the increase in the amounts of money we're receiving from the state in classroom site fund, both ongoing and one time. But we only needed just under $4 million. Ongoing is $4.3 million. So with ongoing resources, we have a $350,000 surplus now in our budget for projected for fiscal year 2022. Okay. So average teacher salary, we always present this. This will be on the front page of the summary. So you can see calculation, we're doing calculations now. So the percentage increase in average teacher salary since fiscal year 2018 is about 22%. So note that Governor Ducey indicated that he would like to have a 20% increase for all teachers by 2020. As you know, that was a statewide average, and each school and charter school has a different base. But we are presenting on our budget the 22%, which does include the also approved by you as the governing board, the 3% one-time pay that's split into two separate pays in December and June of fiscal 2022. Any questions on that? Okay.
No, but that is 3% of that is only this year, and so
It's considered one time.
One-time money
We're
is
scrutinizing everything as much as we can to hopefully make that an ongoing pay increase.
okay.
So.
Thank you.
Now the proposed unrestricted capital budget. So again, focusing on the 2021 revised number 3 versus the proposed 2022, you can see that we had a budget capacity of $16.7 million in the current fiscal year, and we are proposing $20.3 million in fiscal 2022, which is an increase of $3.6 million. I really need to point out the row regarding budget balance carry forward. So we had a $3 million budget balance carry forward in the current year from 2020 into 2021. We projected $2 million, but due to the decision to delay the ELA adoption, the English language acquisition adoption, that's has increased the budget balance carry forward to that $5.2 million, which results in that $3.6 million increase in budget capacity. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear. Okay. And then again, these are the non-discretionary unrestricted capital expenditures that you have seen in the past. We are still going through the prioritization process, leaving $11.9 million. We have ongoing performing arts needs, school marquees, athletics, and then general school capital needs. We've already made the request. We are scrutinizing the request right now to have the leadership team prioritize those requests and allocate out the capital as quickly as possible.
And then,
Go ahead.
Santa Cruz, and then can you bring back a report on how
those
you-
decisions, you
Yeah, on
bet.
those decisions and where that went?
You
Thank
bet. So other funds. So just really quick, you can see the quantification of classroom site fund, the almost $40 million that we are budgeting for classroom site fund. Not only is the use of the funds expanded, but the 3 buckets are now collapsed. So we only have Fund 10 instead of 11, 12, and 13. That, again, gives us more flexibility. Again, adding the inclusion of support personnel under Function 2100, so that's related to the dollars in the classroom analysis that the Auditor General does annually. And then you can see the details of the $733 which $192 per student is one time. Instructional improvement, $3.1 million. It does include carryover, and it does include funding the instructional leadership coach, FTE, at the elementary school, which I believe you guys approved a couple of board meetings ago. And then Title I, we have a $2.8 million budget capacity listed, but it does not include carry forward of approximately $705,000. We are anticipating that the state of Arizona will be successful in their waiver to request that all the title funds be able to be carried forward due to the situation with the pandemic throughout most of 2021. And then the bond fund, finally, a budget of $59.8 million, which accounts for all the available resources of all bonds sold, not the available resources of authority, but all the bonds sold to date, which includes the sale that we closed on in August. Okay, any other questions on any of those? Okay, great. One-time federal funds, we will have continuing conversations about ESSER 3 in particular, but this is just information for you and the public so that you understand the quantification of these amounts by each of the funding sources. These are the dollar amounts that you will see in the budget under the federal fund page in the actual proposed budget.
Dr. Santa Cruz?
Go ahead, Mr. Carr.
Ms. Betts, you made the comment that we'll talk more about this. I know there's been a number of questions about some of the curriculum that's proposed, that was proposed in a previous meeting. If I can just make the statement for the public or the clarification for the public, approving the budget is not approving that curriculum. As Ms. Betts indicated, any curriculum purchased for that will still come back for specific review and specific authorization by the board. So I just know, given some of the emails and comments where there's parts of the curriculum and people want to see more of the curriculum, approving the budget is not approving that curriculum, if we could just clarify that.
You bet.
And if I may add, additionally, you have a process, or you're going to come up with a process in place because part of the spend. So we've already, let me just go back a little bit. We've already spent the enrollment stabilization grant. We've already spent our ESSER 1 funds. We've already spent the ESSER 2 funds. So now we have the ESSER 3, but there's some rules that have come through with it that we need to have community input, and we've started that, but we'll have more as we go forward. So, right? If you
Correct.
can kind of
We'll
give a
have
little more.
superintendent council meetings at the beginning of August. I think it's right around, well, maybe mid-August, August 18th. I think we're scheduling them for, and that's where we'll go to representatives from every one of our schools at the support staff level, certified level, as well as parent level, and we'll also pull in administrators to get their feedback, and kind of like what we did with the chamber. It's going to be a round robin, and we'll throw out some thoughts and ideas, but we also want to hear how others feel we need to allocate these funds, and then after we get all that input, we'll bring it back here and we'll put an application together, but we'll make sure you're informed of the direction that we're going and the input that we receive from our stakeholders.
Thank you.
So
Can I add
again,
to that? Sorry. Sorry.
That's okay.
Didn't mean to do that. And if anybody wants, unsolicited, they can email me, you, the board, anybody here at the district level with those thoughts and ideas well ahead of time. I know that this has been publicized a little bit, and so we welcome all of that information. We're compiling that on a daily basis. So.
Because you presented some initial ideas at the last meeting.
Correct, right.
For the ESSER spend. So we haven't approved anything of that. We're just starting the process of priorities and then gathering information.
right, and the reason that we wanted to start it is because there's sort of a soft deadline of wanting to have all of the applications for ESSER 3 in around August 25th.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
So again, assumes the House budget is approved by the governor, assumes a loss of 400 students. Could be more, could be less. You know, we're hoping for positive actual occurrence of more students. And also anticipates that the budget balance carry forward will be maximized in providing increasing flexibility for the 22 adopted budget. So finally, the estimated tax rates. So the QTR is set at 3.5388, decreased by 0.1354 from 2021, 13.5 cents it was decreased. So you can see that we levied $3.76 on the primary for fiscal '21, and that we are projecting this will go down to $3.69 for fiscal year 2022. The M&O override was levied at 1.4 cents, $1.40 for fiscal year 2021. We expect that will go down to $1.26, due primarily to the loss in students and the loss in actual dollar amounts that we are expected to get. And then finally, the Class B bonds, we levied $1.09. We are estimating a little bit of an increase in the bond levy in anticipation of a bond sale in February to make sure that we have the resources needed to complete all of the projects scheduled for next summer at the end of fiscal 2022. So finally, the levy from 2021 to 2022 is expected to go down by almost 19 cents. And then in comparing that to the November 2019 election pamphlet, we are lower than that projected by nearly 40 cents. And that's per $100 of assessed value.
And Dr. Santa Cruz? If I
Yes,
may-
go ahead, Mr. Carr.
I make these kind of comments every time we present this, but just want to highlight again for the public, the QTR, as Ms. Betts said, is not a number that we set. It's a number that's set by the legislature. We seem to get a lot of feedback on, hey, you're raising the tax rate. We don't, in fact, set the tax rate. That's the QTR that's set by the legislature. Our budget is the levy that is set. The amount that's passed on to property tax comes through the QTR. The rest comes from the general fund. And we highlight that the budget limit that we set is statutorily driven. So we're following state statute in setting that amount. So it's not an arbitrary amount that we set. We get blamed a lot when this rate goes up. We hope that even though I just put the disclaimer and continue to put the disclaimer that it's not us, maybe for once they'll give us credit that it's going down, even though it's not us. Similarly, with the formula, the other part that we again don't set is rates go up and down proportionally to the overall tax base within our district boundaries, and that is set by the county assessor. So again, our portion is to follow a statutory formula and voter-approved overrides and bonds, but the actual rates and amounts are set by calculations based on your assessed value from the county assessor and legislative action. So just try to educate the public with that, but I know some hear and some don't. So
Thank you, Mr. Carr.
Okay, great.
Ms. Betts?
And the last one is just a question to all of you. Do you have any questions? Any further questions?
Board members, questions, comments? Ms. Wood?
Thank you. Just one final question, and I brought this up before too, but typically, we had large budget balance carry forwards in several of the funds and in general. And typically, that's not our practice. But can you explain why and how and what the strategy was and what our intention is going forward?
Right. So I think taking us back 6 months ago, back in December when we were revising the current year budget drastically down, very concerned about our significant drop in students. But at that point in time, the federal relief dollars came in. So those are all one-time money in nature, and we're able to spend those. But what that does is it offloads maintenance and operations expense into a federal fund. That automatically creates budget balance carry forward. In addition, in this very difficult time associated with how to project our number of students going into a new year and knowing that we are funded based upon current year students. It's important that we try to utilize all of our resources appropriately to try to maximize those budget balance carry forward amounts into the new fiscal year, giving us the greatest flexibility to be able to handle any possibility associated with a continued drop in students, knowing that for most of our staff, it's our teaching staff, and that we provide them contracts that we are largely obligated to honor throughout the entire fiscal year. So many of those costs are fixed. So by trying to maximize the budget balance carry forward, at least for this year, gives us an opportunity to be more flexible. The other thing that's important, and Ms. Humphreys, you mentioned this about the fact that 3% one-time pay that's paid over 2 times is one-time in nature, because we are using ESSER 3. That is one of the areas that you have approved for the spend of ESSER 3. That is using one-time money for a one-time pay, but we are anticipating additional revenues from Proposition 208, as well as really scrutinizing our budget in the current year and next year to determine how much of that budget balance carry forward is really ongoing money. You know, it looks like it's one time because it's budget balance carry forward, but it's very probable that a large portion of that could be ongoing, giving us an opportunity to make sure that we fund that 3% pay increase into 2023.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Santa Cruz, if I can just
Go right ahead, Mr. Carr.
Thank you. And Ms. Betts, I think you need to give yourself a little more credit than you are. When you came on board, you immediately addressed the concern that our budget balance carry forward was lower than it should be. And because it was lower, at times we were having to request tax advance notes, which actually cost the district interest and takes money out of the classroom. You set targets and have, over the last few years, inched us towards a proper balance. And we don't want an overly large amount, because that means we're not spending dollars on the current students, but we do want the proper amount. On an earlier slide, when you showed that budget balance carry forward, you actually included on there interest earned. You know, what a nice problem to have. Instead of paying interest and taking dollars out of the classroom, we're earning interest, which allows us to put those dollars into the classroom. So I compliment you and your team for managing the budget balance carry forward in a proper amount that actually is benefiting our students. So thank you for doing that.
You bet.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. And if I could add, with that statement, any of the strategies that you employed and advised the board upon, at least it's my impression that nothing that we did in that regard compromised the learning or the instruction of the student. So we hit a balance, and I think we were happy with the balance that we hit. Mrs. Humphreys?
Oh, I did want to add thank you. I think that this has been a complicated year, and certainly school finance is a very complicated issue. And so I think I appreciate the clearness of the presentation. I also really appreciate our voters in 2015 and 2019 coming through and supporting our bonds and override, because that makes a huge difference for us. And we are very blessed to be able to do more for our students because of those funds given to us by the voters.
Board members, any other questions, any other comments? Seeing that there are none, then we'll move to item 3.02, which is a request to speak regarding FY 2022 proposed budget, the information that was just presented. I don't have any requests to speak at this point. With that being said, then we will move to item 3.01 and adjourning this public hearing. Is there a motion?
I move that we adjourn the public hearing on the budget.
Thank you, Mrs. Humphreys. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Wood. Any discussion? Seeing that there is no discussion, we will vote on adjourning this portion of the public hearing and moving back reconvening our regularly scheduled board meeting. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, same. Motion carries 5-0. Public hearing is closed. We move to item 4, reconvene the regular board meeting. Item 4.01 is a motion to reconvene.
I move to reconvene the regular board meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Humphries. Any discussion? Seeing none, we will vote on the motion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, the same. Motion carries 5-0. Item 5 is approval of the agenda. 5.01 is approving the agenda for tonight. Please, is there a motion?
I move to approve tonight's agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Wood. Any discussion? Seeing none, we will vote on approving tonight's agenda, which is item 5.01. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, the same. Motion carries 5-0. We're at item 6, the superintendent's report, 6.01. Dr. McCord.
Thank you, Dr. Santa Cruz, governing board members. Before I start with the report, I'd like to recognize an employee of ours who passed away a couple weeks ago, a teacher from Desert Ridge High School, Mr. Joel Reichert. He unexpectedly passed away, and he leaves behind his wife as well as 2 children who are students of Gilbert Public Schools. So please keep the Reichert family in your thoughts. Welcome to everyone for being here tonight and online. I hope everybody is having an enjoying a restful summer. Here in GPS, our operations department is busy completing projects at several of our schools and departments, and our custodians are deep cleaning and getting ready for the return of the students and staff. Many of our teachers are taking advantage of professional development opportunities, and our principals, assistant principals, deans are planning for the upcoming school year. And summer school is in full swing, and the students are sharpening their skills, getting ready for the beginning of August. All in all, it's been a very productive and successful summer. Last week, the district collaboration team met and interviewed 16 applicants for the soon-to-be vacant governing board position. The district collaboration team consisted of myself, the governing board president, the governing board clerk, a parent, a principal, a teacher, and a member of the support staff. We had the pleasure of meeting and getting to know 16 people who were willing to serve their school district and community. Thank you to all those that applied. It is truly appreciated. After the interviews, we had to make the difficult decision to select names to recommend to the county superintendent. Originally, we were going to send 3 names, but because the applicant pool was so strong, we felt 4 names would be better. With the permission from the county superintendent's office, we sent 4 names, and those names are Colette Evans, Cody Jacobs, Trina Jodas, and Blake Robeson. We want to thank everyone that applied and spent time with us during the interview process. We are very fortunate to have such outstanding individuals in our community. The next step will be for the county superintendent to interview candidates that applied to GPS, as well as directly to the county superintendent's office. I believe they may be interviewing some candidates this week, and I'm sure they'll make their decision within the next few weeks. Again, thank you to everyone that took the time to apply. Speaking of a vacant governing board position, tonight is Mr. Reed Carr's last meeting as a governing board member. Mr. Carr, on behalf of myself and the entire GPS community, I can't thank you enough for the time, dedication, and devotion you've given to the GPS community for the past 5 years. You remained steadfast in your responsibilities as a board member, made compromise when you felt it was necessary, and you showed people your heart more than anything. Again, thank you, Mr. Carr, for taking this journey with us. I appreciate you and sincerely will miss you. Please give him a hand.
Before we move on, I'd like to defer to Ms. Uggetti. she had a request to speak on behalf of Mr. Carr. Ms. Ujedi?
Thank you, Dr. Santa Cruz. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I would like to thank Mr. Carr for his service to our GPS board. Reed, your knowledge of school finance has amazed me, as very few people understand this very complicated part of a school district. You have been so thorough in making sure that our district has been transparent to the public. You have always been thoughtful in every decision you have made. I have appreciated our differences as much as what we agree on, as you have made me think about my decisions. Thank you for all that you have done, and I and GPS will miss you a whole bunch. You truly care, and that matters more than anything else in this world, in my humble opinion.
Was that the end there, Ms. Ujedi?
That was it.
Okay, I wasn't sure. Board members, I will leave it open.
I think you got sidetracked
Go ahead.
when I said humble opinion. I think you got sidetracked when I said humble opinion.
Never get sidetracked on that. You are indeed a font of humility. Board members?
I would like to make some comments. I appreciate that, board service is very challenging. It takes a lot of time and effort, and I think, up here sometimes it's really hard to work out our differences. I know sometimes it's looked pretty messy, but that's what being elected to office and trying to work with others is sometimes about. And I think Mr. Carr has had a deep desire to serve, and I wish him well in what he's going to do going forward. There's a balance, and board service pretty much has to come first in our lives, and sometimes that's not sustainable for a hugely long time. Some people manage to do it, but anyone that can give for an amount of time, it's very appreciated. So thank you, Mr. Carr, for your service.
Thank you, Ms. Humphries. Ms. Wood?
I'll just keep it short and say thank you very much. I've enjoyed and appreciated your time, and respect and appreciate your thoughts and the way that you've shared them, and the way that you have, again, brought, I think, opportunities for all of us to look at things in specific ways and to come to the best decisions for our students and staff. So thank you.
And Mr. Carr, for my part, I concur with all that has been said, and I wish you well. Thank you for your service, and thank you for your friendship. Dr. McCord, anything else for your report?
No, sir, that concludes my report for this evening.
Very good. Mr. Carr, is there anything that you would like to say?
If it's all right, I'll wait till the end and
Very
maybe
good.
make some comments at the board report section.
We'll do that. Okay. Thank you. We will move to item 7, request to speak to the governing board. I do not have any requests at this time. So we'll then move to item 8, which is item 8.01, the monthly budget report. So we get to see some numbers again. Dr. McCord?
Dr. Santa Cruz, if the first presentation wasn't enough, we'll hone it down to monthly. So, Ms. Betts, you're up again.
Good evening again. This is a very short report, but I just want to remind you we're talking about the end of May, the current fiscal year, not the new year. So going back a year, basically. So this is our district operating fund grid. You can see that under Fund 001, you can see the available balance is the $23.9 million roughly, which is what we have budgeted for in the proposed budget to be approved, hopefully approved by you later this evening. Also note the unrestricted capital outlay, which again shows the $5.2 million, what we definitely expect to see in budget balance carry forward. So that's all I have on this operating fund grid. I just wanted to point out, we had a meeting with Natalie Tenney earlier this evening, and she indicated that we have been providing a great deal of meals, and due to the federal reimbursement, you can see that our revenues have continued to climb. So our estimated revenues are now over $12 million, when prior to that we were estimating a little bit over $10 million. So our nutrition services fund is in really good shape. The other funds, just wanted to point out the Joint Technical Education Fund. There is a significant available balance. Again, we talked about on the proposed budget that we have the room to be able to move approved staff out of maintenance and operations and move them into this JTED fund. So that's just another reminder that we have the resources available to do that. And then I thought you might find this interesting. So these are school student-based funds. So I wanted to remind you that the auxiliary operations funds are all the funds associated with fees that students pay. Athletic fees, school supply fees, classroom supply fees, those types of things. And so in addition, we have extracurricular tax credit, textbook fund, as well as gifts and donations. So I asked staff to put this into context by school and entity, by grade level. And so we did that. So as you would expect, most of the available balance is at the high schools. That's where most of the athletics occur, and athletics were fortunately very robust during the 2021 school year. You can see the junior high has a little bit less than the elementary, but I wanted to point out the other. So remember that as part of our auxiliary funds, we also have schools requesting field trips and athletic trips. So those are charged through transportation, and those revenues that come from the schools go into a transportation auxiliary fund, and most of this $1.8 million is associated with that. And in the past, we have mostly moved maintenance and operations expense out of M&O for fuel and into this auxiliary fund. The other one is the device protection plan that was initiated when we went to the one-to-one initiative. And so that money goes directly to offsetting the cost of repairs of Chromebooks and other instructional technology materials. So I just wanted to share those details with all of you.
Dr. Santa Cruz, can I
Go ahead,
ask
Ms.
Ms.
Witt.
Betts? So this is more than we typically see. Is that what you're saying?
No, this is comparable to what we've typically seen. We just split it out into the grade levels for you so you have an understanding of where most of the money is lying, basically.
And then, have we spent this then?
No, these are available
encumbered?
balances.
These are available. So this
Yeah.
is typically what's available.
It's available after the revenues and expenditures have been identified to date. Again, we're still 3 months out from this school year. We still have expenses to pay through August 31st. So these balances will go down. But it does give flexibility to our schools for the start of next year to be able to get their spend out there for various things that they would need to start school.
Okay, so the schools can use these funds they'll have allocations of these funds for things that they need. I'm just trying to understand where will we see these dollars spent?
So let's look at the high school as an example. So a large portion of this is probably from the athletic fees. And so that gives the schools an opportunity to prepare for football, to buy football materials, et cetera, those kinds of things.
Some of this is tax credits, so
Some of this is tax credit.
so
right?
some of this is perhaps, if you're like me, putting that tax credit money in so that senior year when they have the more expensive choir tour, you put in tax credit for
That's
a few
in there
years
too.
to
That's
offset that
correct.
expense for our family. So a lot of this is not available for us to spend because
It's not available for us to
towards
spend
the
at all.
student.
Yeah, except
It goes
for in
towards
the other
student.
fund, right.
Okay. It goes towards the students and their needs.
So I'm not showing you more than normal, I'm just showing you how it's split out by grade level.
Awesome. I just was asking those questions. I'm not concerned about it. I just was trying to get more details. So
Okay.
I understand now. If it's athletic fees, then it goes toward the coaches and the supplies and all that stuff. And if it's tax credits, it's what it's been designated for by those families. So, okay. Thank
Okay.
you.
You bet.
Okay.
And so the bond funds, this is the summary of our bond funds. I just wanted to point out the encumbrance of $21 million. That's reflective of all the work we're doing right now to get all of our schools ready for the new school year. Okay. Come on, there we go. I'm sharing the debt service fund with you. These are the same information shown in two separate ways. I wanted to bring it to your attention that we've been presenting the debt service fund as a budget-controlled fund. It's actually not. It's actually more of a cash fund. And so we're showing both presentations to you to improve understanding. You can see the transfer in is associated with the fact that any cost of issuance not spent needs to be put into the debt service fund, not be spent as bond proceeds. So you can see that we've done that. And then I just wanted to show that our beginning balance plus our revenue, so a total available resource of $25.9 million. We expect to spend in July as well as in January. The total would be $25.6 million with a projected cash balance of $330,000 at this point. So that projected cash balance will go into the tax levy calculation and will be applied against the new levy for next year, so that cash balance will go towards decreasing the tax rate slightly for the bond debt service fund. Okay? And that's all.
Board members, any additional questions or commentary? No? Thank you again, Ms. Betts, for that very thorough presentation. We move to item 9 is the consent agenda. And we are looking at item 9.01 for a motion regarding the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Humphries. It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? Only
Dr.
dis-
Santa Cruz?
I was just going to defer to you, Ms. Uggetti, but let us vote first, and then I will call on you. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay. All right. With the caveat that we will defer to Ms. Uggetti after the vote, all those in favor of approval of the consent agenda as presented, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, same. Motion carries 5-0. Ms. Uggetti, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Santa Cruz. I just wanted to say that the person who is going to be the new assistant principal at Mesquite High School was one of my Gilbert Elk kiddos, Liz Laybeck. She was a leader in 4th grade and 5th grade and 6th grade, and I could not be more proud of her. And that's all.
Thank you, Ms. Uggetti.
She's also coming from Mountain View.
All right. So we wanted to recognize that life is a continuous circle and it comes back around at us one way or another. Item 10 are action items. Item 10.01. Dr. McCord.
Thank you, Dr. Santa Cruz. Governing board members, it is my pleasure to bring to you tonight for approval of Natalie Tenney as the next Director of Nutrition Services for the 21-22 school year.
Thank you, Dr. McCord. For item 10.01, is there a motion?
Yes, I'd like to move that we appoint Natalie Tenney as the Director of Nutrition Services for the 2021-2022 school year.
Thank you, Mrs. Humphries. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Wood. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, then we will vote on item 10.01, appointment of Natalie Tenney as Director of Nutrition Services for the 2021-2022 school year. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, the same. Motion carries 5-0. Congratulations, Ms. Tenney.
Congratulations.
Would you like to say a few words?
Sure. Dr. McCord, Dr. Santa Cruz, members of the board, I am so excited for this opportunity, and I commit to doing a great job and continuing to uphold our excellent nutrition service department and reaching out to really be a part of the community and family here at Gilbert Public Schools. And I'm excited to get to work. Thank you.
Thank you,
Natalie.
Mrs. Tenney. And while we welcome Mrs. Tenney to her new position, we would be remiss if we didn't speak to the 28 years of service, I believe, of Mrs. Deb McCarran. Mrs. McCarran has grown the food services program in Gilbert Public Schools over those 28 years and has refined every aspect of the program and been an innovator, I think, among food services directors in the state, and is often sought for consultation from others around. So we are appreciative of her service. We will miss her. We wish her well in her retirement, and we thank her for her commitment to Gilbert Public Schools. Dr. McCord?
I just echo everything that you just said, and when I visited with Debbie today, I said, because you always ask that person, okay, well, what are you going to do? She cut me off. She goes, don't worry about me. I got trips planned. I'm going here. I'm going there. I'm going to be busy. And what I loved that she said is, and if you guys need anything from me, I'm more than willing to come back and help in any way I can. So thank you to Debbie for everything you've done for us.
Thank you, Debbie. We'll move to item 10.02, FY 2022 proposed budget for adoption. Anything by way of introduction, Dr. McCord or Ms. Betts?
Would you like Ms. Betts to go through the presentation again?
I
No?
think we've memorized it.
Okay. No, sir.
Thank you, sir. Item 10.02 is in front of you. Is there a motion?
I move we adopt the FY 2022 proposed budget.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Wood. Thank you, Ms. Humphries. Any discussion?
I would like to make a comment. I
Go ahead.
think that one of the things that we've been stellar on is making our budget very transparent, showing what our decisions are, and being fiscally responsible. And I appreciate all the work that the finance department has done on that, but also the board has done on that. And I think it's really important that our constituents know how their tax funds are being spent. That's one of the great parts of public schools. You know where your money's going.
Thank you, Ms. Humphries. Anything else? Seeing none, then we will vote on item 10.03. 02, excuse me. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. 10.03 is advertisement for public hearing on FY 2022 instructional time model. Introductory remarks, Dr. McCord?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dr. Santa Cruz. Governing board members, with your approval, this will allow the district to advertise the fiscal year 2022 instructional time model public hearings for the July 27th, 2021, and the second public hearing scheduled for August 10th, 2021. At both hearings, the administration will make a presentation to the governing board in public. The advertisement will appear on the Arizona Department of Education website. Again, those will be held on July 27th as well as August 10th. So your approval is just allowing us to take that next step.
Thank you, Dr. McCord. With that rationale, is there a motion for item 10.03?
I move that we approve 10.03 advertisement for public hearing on the FY 2022 instructional time model.
Thank you, Mrs. Wood. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Any discussion?
Just,
Go ahead, Ms. Wood.
Thank you, Dr. Santa Cruz. Just to clarify, we discussed this briefly, I believe at the last meeting or the meeting before, but this is due to a change in the state statute and offering different models or opportunities to account for instruction. And so per the state statute, in order to change these models in any way, we have to have these two hearings. And you guys will give the details of how we're going to do this at those hearings before we approve anything. And we'll have that. Hopefully we'll have more guidance by then from the state to give us.
That is correct.
You know.
Our goal is to make sure that when we present something to you, it's as accurate as possible. And again, a lot of these things are approved, late in the school year, and so being able to scramble, finish the current school year, propose a budget for the next school year, and then look at something like this, which it can be complicated. And so we want to make sure that our foot is stepping in the right direction and that we don't approve something that ends up being fiscally irresponsible in the long run. So when we have all that information, we'll be bringing it forward.
Thank you.
So, Dr. McCord, just a specific change. Again, there's no place to post it on the Department of Ed's website, so we are posting it on.
That would have been good information.
Yeah.
Before I said it, but thank you.
Yeah, and there's probably an error in the posting. I apologize for that. So it will be posted on the Gilbert Public Schools website.
Perfect. Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah. And once again, the clarification is the advertising for the public hearing, and that is what the vote will approve, is the advertising. So all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Motion carries 5-0. Item 10.04 is increase in bus driver base pay by $1 per hour for new hires with CDL, commercial driver's licenses. Dr. McCord, any rationale?
I'll just start off and then I'll kick it over to Ms. Betts in a second. Currently, it is extremely difficult to find bus drivers, and I think as one of the folks from our cabinet says, it's been difficult for several years to be able to do that. It's a very competitive market, and our goal is to always make sure that we find the very best people to transport our students to and from school. And as that market continues to be competitive, we have to be a little more innovative in different ways to attract those folks that are willing to do that to our school district. This weekend, on Saturday over at Mesquite High School, our transportation department put together a job fair where individuals who were interested in being a bus driver had the opportunity to come over to the school and actually drive a bus around the parking lot and get a feel for what that may be like. And I had the opportunity to do that. Ms. Betts had the opportunity. None of us hit any cones, so that was a good thing. But we ended up getting some folks with some applications being put in, and hopefully we've secured some drivers. But we're a long ways away from what we need for to be fully staffed. And so, Ms. Betts, will you talk a little bit more about the dollar amount?
Sure. So the specific issue is that we have historically the last 3 years been short between 25 and 30 drivers, and largely due to the pandemic, we are down 46, and so we're trying to do everything we can to attract, and we're having some severe competition from our neighboring school districts as well. So we believe that with an additional amount, if you have a CDL, it actually will be budgetary savings for a couple of years for those individuals because we avoid the cost of training them, which, depending upon the individual, could cost between $3,000 and $5,000. So we think this is a good move. In addition, I wanted to share that one of the things I learned, I was able to drive my bus with one of the trainers, and so I immediately got the wheel, and I'm turning hand over hand, right, to turn the wheel. She says, "No, Bonnie, you can't do that. You got to push and pull." So she's like, "You have to push and pull, push and pull. Don't go hand over hand." So I learned something about driving a bus. So hopefully I won't ever have to use it. Thank you for letting me share.
I think what's advantageous as well is that if they come in with the CDL, we can actually put them on the road right away. And so there isn't that time that we have to keep them out for training. So it's an advantage.
Thank you. You've heard the rationale. Item 10.04, is there a motion?
I move that we increase bus driver base pay by $1 an hour for new hires with a CDL commercial driver's license.
Thank you, Ms. Humphries. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
I just want to mention that this seems to me to be a perennial problem. It's probably at least the fourth or fifth time that we've had to address the fact that we need higher driver pay in order to attract drivers for our schools. And we don't want just anybody. We want people who are going to be careful and cautious drivers and do a good job with our kids. So, I realize we do this, it seems like every other year, but it's really important that we have good drivers, and they're very much essential to our operation.
Thank you, Ms. Humphries. Ms. Wood?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Santa Cruz. A couple questions, Ms. Butts. Where would this increase in pay come from? Does that come from M&O or transportation limit?
So it's so the transportation revenue control limit is part of the maintenance and operations budget. So it's definitely maintenance and operations, and we always have turnover savings as those retire and making a lot more money, and we hire individuals at a lower rate of pay even with this. In addition, the savings of not having to go through the training will fund that. And finally, if we can find the candidates, we did incur a great deal of overtime in the current year because of the lack of drivers. So much of the overtime savings will go to fund these increases.
Okay, thank you so much. And then secondly, do you think that $1 an hour is enough to be competitive? Have you looked at the other districts, or how have you come to that $1 an hour?
We have, and in discussions with the leadership team in transportation, the addition of the $1 an hour, if you have a CDL, does allow us to put out a job posting that is competitive in the market today. So it puts us in the mid-range of $16, $16.30, $40, $16.40, 30 or 40 cents, which is right about the mid-range of the starting salary in our local market here in the East Valley. And then based upon conversations with both the director, Trace, as well as the assistant director, Megan, they felt that the $1 an hour for a CDL was an appropriate bump in the pay.
Thank you.
Any additional comments or questions? Seeing none, we will vote on item 10.04. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, the same. Motion carries 5-0. Item 10.05 is an increase in hourly worker wages by up to $2 per hour for hard-to-fill hourly positions. Dr. McCord, any rationale?
Thank you, Dr. Santa Cruz, governing board members. This is along the same vein as we were having discussions about bringing this, the previous item to you. This conversation came up because it's not just bus drivers that we have a difficult time filling positions for. And again, it's not this year, it's not last year, it's not the last 5 years, it's every year. And so we want to make sure that we have the best support staff that we can find for our students and our district. And sometimes rates aren't as competitive as they need to be, and we have to be able to give credit as much as possible to those coming in with some experience. And so, especially if they're hard to fill positions. So, for example, if you have a paraprofessional in a self-contained SPICE class, they're difficult to find. And we need to have adults with our students in specially devised classrooms like that one. And so offering up the ability to increase pay for someone coming on the base is extremely important to us. And so those be classified as hard to fill positions is something similar that we do for certified staff. And the funding for this would come from turnover savings as well as vacancy savings that we incur every single year. So hopefully this will be able to attract more individuals and keep them here for longer periods of time.
Thank you, Dr. McCord. You have heard the rationale. Is there a motion for item 10.05?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Humphries. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Wood. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Ms. Betts and I had a discussion about, we just did a salary schedule last year. Could you just talk about how this might impact the salary schedule and the more general look that we're going to do on that?
So addition to these two requests, these will not impact the gradation scheme that takes us from grade level 101 all the way up to grade level 135 or something like that. So it keeps the structure of our compensation grid consistent. But at the same time, we also discuss the importance of going back to that and making modifications and quantifying the cost of making us more competitive across the entire range of positions throughout Gilbert Public Schools. So we will be doing that over the next couple of months.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Wood?
Thanks, Dr. Santa Cruz. Just to add on to that, if we could really look at that and make sure that we're not negatively impacting our employees who have been here and who have served, for a year or years, and somehow don't have a benefit because they've been here. That would be a concern that I hope we will address.
So we made a commitment as we go through this process again of making us competitive across the board, that at the same time we do the same analysis regarding equity adjustments. So we will quantify not only bringing the starting salaries up to a more competitive level, but also addressing individuals that are already here within those ranges and bringing them up with equity adjustments to bring them more within the range that they should be in because of their time here at Gilbert Public Schools. So it is both a process by which we will address the starting pay as well as the retention of those that are here with us today.
Thank you.
Any additional comments or questions? Seeing none, then item 10.05 is before you. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, the same. Motion carries 5-0. Item 10.06, Policy Development First Read, Policy BEDH, Public Participation at Board Meetings. Dr. McCord, any rationale?
Thank you, Dr. Santa Cruz, governing board member. Policy BEDH, public participation at board meetings. This is something that we've discussed over time in policy committee meetings. And our current policy enables the president to limit time based on number, but that wasn't specific. And we felt it was important that we became more specific just so it wouldn't confuse the public in any way, shape, or form. And so the addition to letter C in policy BEDH is as follows. As a general rule, speakers will be limited to up to 3 minutes to make their comments, depending on the number of speakers. Unless otherwise specified by the board president, the following limits will apply. 1 to 15 speakers is 3 minutes. 16 to 30 speakers is 2 minutes. And anything over 31 plus speakers is 1 minute. And that is the proposed change. This has gone through Policy Committee, as I stated earlier, and we are presenting it to you for a first read this evening.
Thank you, Dr. McCord. You've heard the rationale. Is there a motion for item 10.06?
I move that we adopt policy BEDH, first read for public participation at board meetings.
Thank you, Mrs. Humphries. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Dr. Santa Cruz, I was not at the last policy meeting, although this has been discussed at more than one policy meeting. Just want to clarify, the intent here is not to limit the overall public input. We welcome public input. In fact, we've expanded the ways that people can provide us public input, both in addition to the comments here. There's an official form by which they can submit comments for a board meeting, as well as the email. It's a putting in place a practical measure when we have a large number of speakers. I know that going back to the entire time that I've been on the board, when Ms. Uggetti was president, when I served as president, when Dr. Santa Cruz has been president, we've asked people, hey, if you have a common theme, can you try and consolidate your remarks? And we've tried various approaches on those nights that we have a number of responses. So this is done with some reluctance because of the appearance of time constraints, but also done in a practical manner to allow the board to move forward with its business, and just want to make sure that the public is aware. It's not our desire to limit the input. It's our desire to make the meetings relatively efficient.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Any other commentary, discussion?
I just think it is important to put it into the policy. It's already at the discretion of the board president. But we have had evenings where we have had, a number of people who want to come in, and we want to allow as many as possible. But there's also just a limit on what we as the board physically can be here and how many hours we can enjoy that comment. So making it short and sweet so everyone gets a chance to say what they want to say, I think is a good compromise to help us get to those challenging decisions that we sometimes have to make.
Thank you, Mrs. Humphries. Anything additional? Seeing none, then we will vote on item 10.06. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, the same. Motion carries 5-0. Item 10.07, Policy Development First Read, Policy GCCG, Professional Staff Voluntary Transfer of Accrued Sick Leave. Dr. McCord, any rationale?
Dr. Santa Cruz, governing board members, we bring to you tonight policy GCCG, Professional Staff Voluntary Transfer of Accrued Sick Time. July 28th of 2020, we added some language to our current policy, and that was due to COVID. It said for the 2020-2021 school year, if an employee has exhausted FFCRA due to COVID-19 and the employee contracts COVID-19 for a second time, they may request up to 2 weeks or 10 days, 80 hours for a full-time employee, or for a part-time employee, the number of hours equal to the average number of hours that the employee works over a typical 2-week period of paid sick leave from the medical leave bank. Membership of the medical leave bank for the COVID-19 related requests is waived for the 2020-21 school year. Based on the direction that we've been going in terms of COVID, vaccinations being out there, especially in the East Valley, we don't believe that this is necessary for our policy any longer, but just know that we have the formal language. If for some reason we have to go back to it, we will, but we want to think positively and head in that direction.
Thank you, Dr. McCord. You've heard the rationale. Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve the first read of policy GCCG, professional staff voluntary transfer of accrued sick leave.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Wood. Any discussion? Seeing none, then we will vote on item 10.07. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, the same. Motion carries 5-0. Item 10.08, development, first read, policy JFABC, admission of transfer students. Dr. McCord, any rationale?
Thank you, Dr. Santa Cruz, governing board members. We bring before you for first read policy JFABC, admission of transfer students. Again, this is something that we have put through the policy committee a couple times since I've been here, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Newman to be able to give any details related to this.
Good evening, President Santa Cruz, governing board members, and Dr. McCord. As Dr. McCord had stated, we have seen this several times. As we looked at the last policy committee, we've looked and examined and really realized that it would probably be in our best interest to go specifically back to the recommendation of ASBA, which is what we've done several years prior to that. So there are just some minor changes to the policy, and some of those are we wanted to be sure that we put in an exception clause in there, and that exception clause will allow the superintendent or designee to make exceptions if needed for particular circumstances or instances. And other than that, I'm going to actually ask Mr. Carr to talk to some specifics, if you don't mind, of what you might want to do as well.
I think as a matter of order, we need to make a motion first, and then so perhaps I can just make a motion to pass it, and then I may ask for a substitute motion with some changes if it's the desire of the board. So I will move to adopt the first read, or to approve the first read of policy JFABC, admission of transfer students.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Wood. Discussion, Mr. Carr, defer to you.
Dr. Santa Cruz, just again, we've discussed this in policy meeting. I did not have a chance to see the final version, if you will, until today, as I missed the meeting earlier this month. I would like to propose just a few minor changes. There's actually no changing in wording, but you have before you a copy of the changes. You'll notice that there's a paragraph highlighted in yellow. That is word for word the same. I've simply moved it to its location in this version. It was the second to last paragraph just before exceptions in the ASBA. I felt like it flowed better. And then you'll notice a couple of headers that I've added that are in blueprint that just allow for clarification of the sections. Again, the intent was not to change, but to make clear the section. So as we move through credit for graduation requirements, then kind of the next section talks about how we evaluate those credits between core and elective credit, then the rights of the student to challenge that through examination, and finally just putting a header above the exceptions. So no wording changes to what the committee proposed, just a change in order and some headers. So
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Well, then would you want to offer a substitute motion for your original motion?
I would like to offer the substitute motion to approve JFABC with the reordering as outlined what you have in front of you.
Is there a second?
I'll second, and this is just the first read again. It will go
This
back
is
to
just the first read.
policy
It'll come back,
again.
and any discussion, and then we'll vote on the amendment, and we will be clear. So, is there any discussion?
So I guess I have a question. So there's really no change. It's just the editing process.
I felt like by reordering it, it actually became clear for the parents and for those outside to understand what we were trying to communicate. Putting the credits and then putting the core credit, that yellow paragraph at the end, kind of put it out of order from a parental perspective. So that was the intent, was to make it clear for parents to understand it.
All right, thank you.
Any additional discussion?
Dr. Santa Cruz, I want to come back to this one. This policy was, I think, the first motion that I made to address. We've addressed it at least 4 times in the last 4.5 years and made modifications. I have to say I'm very pleased with the outcome, and I think it's where it should be in my personal opinion. So I'm glad to get this policy where it is, and we've all taken over time and learned, including me. This is not exactly what I would have proposed 4 years ago, but I think it's where it should be. So I'm pleased that it may also be the last policy that we discuss, as it was the first one that I proposed we discuss.
Well, let's hope the next person doesn't make it their first policy. That's what happens.
As in all cases, I'm certain it won't be the last time. So, all right. With that, if there is no further discussion, we will vote on item 10.08. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Item 11 is request for future agenda items, and 11.01, once again, if you don't have anything for this evening, please get a hold of Mrs. Wilson and present your item to her so that we may review it.
Dr. Santa Cruz, for next month's meeting, I have 32 items to add to the, just kidding.
Don't push it, Mr. Carr. All right, item 12 is board committee reports. 12.01 is the Gilbert Education Foundation. Mrs. Humphreys?
Yes, Gilbert Education Foundation will be having their board retreat towards the end of July, which means that we will be working very, very hard. It's just a nice word for we're getting together to work hard. Nobody wants to say we're getting together to work hard. Also, I just wanted to report on a couple of visits that I have made. I attended the Summer Educational Technology Institute. I went in person both days and just was really impressed with the classes and the teachers who were there to learn, and the keynote speakers that we had were very, very good. And I just feel like there was a lot of good positive things, and I really appreciated those teachers who were there. And I know there were many who were taking the online portion as well. They come and attend and they get credit for attending, but it's not compensated time. So I just want to appreciate them for their work there, and just had a lot of interesting conversations and learned a lot about what we're doing in our district. And I really appreciated the way that we're moving forward. I think we have a really good team in place. And then I was able to make some summer school visits to our elementary schools, both Title I, our summer boot camp, and then our regular elementary school, summer school, and just really impressed with what the kids are learning. I talked to one high school science teacher who was teaching science for elementary students and teaching them about animals and their habitats, and how much she enjoyed that. They're doing STEAM, and I got to see some kids explode a little rocket off of an M&M container with some Alka-Seltzer and water. I mean, it's really amazing what we are doing in our schools, and the kids are having a lot of fun learning and enjoying that time in the classroom. Plus, because of these universal meals, they can come in, pick up their breakfast, and then eat their breakfast in the classroom while they're learning, and then take their lunch home with them. So I think it's been a really wonderful opportunity. I'm really grateful that we had federal dollars to help us do some of these summer school programs, and I'm just really impressed where we're going. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Humphreys. Item 12.02, City of Mesa Liaison, Ms. Woods.
I don't have anything to report this month.
Thank you, Ms. Wood. Item 12.03, very briefly, it's been quite active down at the legislature for the last, gosh knows how long.
150 days? 165.
At
I
least
think it is.
150 days. And just for your information, I believe ASBA is doing a wrap-up on July the 14th, thereabouts. It's a webinar. So if you are interested, something that might be of value. Item 12.04, 12.05, I will defer to Mr. Carr on those two items, and then anything else he would like to add.
I do not have anything to report from the town of Gilbert. Regarding the Finance Audit Committee, some time ago we made the decision to add a second member of the public to that audit committee, but we've never had any interested parties express a willingness or desire to put on that. As of July 1st, I do know somebody who might be willing to fill that role as a member of the public. So if it's the will of the rest of the board or the board as it moves forward, I propose that I would love to stay involved with the schools and in that quarterly meeting, representing the public instead of the board. I'll leave that for a future agenda item if you so choose. A month ago, when I announced my resignation, I expressed my gratitude and to many. There's no way that I can fully express my gratitude to all, at least not by name. But I thank my fellow board members and Dr. McCord for your kind words earlier this evening. It's an interesting dynamic. If you look, 7 years ago, I was running a campaign to be on this dais. In hindsight, the election came around, and I think I placed 5th out of 5 people on the ballot. 2 years after that, I again ran and placed 3rd out of 4 people on the ballot. So I have the proud position of saying I have lost to all 4 of my fellow board members. But I would point out the trend goes from 5 to 3. The next natural number, if there were to be one, would be a number I would like. But let me clarify, I have no intention of running for another elected position. But I would like to thank the parents in our community. I'd like to thank our staff and our faculty. One of the great privileges of serving on the board is being out in the community and getting to know people that you don't otherwise know. We have an incredible community. I am thankful to the administrators, the vice principals, the principals, all of the people in this building. Sometimes in education, we see people maligned. It's never enough. I just convey to the public, I have never doubted, while there may be disagreement at times within the board or even the board with some of the proposals, I have never doubted the intentions of our superintendent and his staff and the people who serve in this district. They truly care about your children. They truly care about our community. They live here. They love our community. Many of them grew up here. And even those who may not have grown up here, they chose to live here. They chose to work here. And I think that says a lot about them. I ran my campaign, both times I ran, on a concept of bridge building and civility. I hope that in spite of the few times when I have perhaps failed, I hope that overall people will look back at my time and say that I added to the civility of our community, that I was willing to talk with everybody, I was willing to listen, I was willing to adjust my ideas when appropriate. If I failed to do that, I apologize, because that is my sincere desire. I do want to do what's right, but I want to do it in the right way. I am a firm and ongoing believer in our neighborhood schools. I think while I have always supported the idea of school choice, I have strongly felt that my job on this board is to make Gilbert Public Schools that choice. I believe that when we come together, instead of simply saying, oh, I have a difference and going on our own ways and selecting to go a different way, when we come together, we come to greater understanding, we build civility, and we build community. And I hope that if anything, that is my legacy. But in the end, I hope that you feel my love and my full gratitude for each person in this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. We're at item 12.06. Ms. Ujetti.
I'm just really glad I don't have anything to report tonight after that.
Okay. All right, we'll move to item 13.01. Meeting dates. Dr. McCord.
Thank you, Dr. Santa Cruz. Governing board members, our next meeting will be July 27th, Tuesday. It's a board business meeting. Typically, we have one meeting in July to give you an opportunity to go spend some time with your family and staff as well. So that will be our next meeting date, and we're ready to come back and be better than we've ever been. So we're looking forward to it.
Thank you, Dr. McCord. We'll move to item 14.01, which is adjournment. Is there a motion?
I move to adjourn.
Thank you, Mrs. Humphreys. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Wood. Discussion? Seeing none, we will vote on adjournment. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, the same.
Nay.
Motion carries 4-1. We are adjourned.